Hello and welcome to the Flatchat Sim Racing Podcast, brought to you by Virtual Racing School in conjunction with SimSpeed Entertainment. On today's show, we have Johhny Brandon and Tony Kloosterman from the European V8 Supercar League. Also joining me is special co-host, the one and only Mr. Jamie McKnight.
This is V8 Scopes.
The Flatchat Podcast V8 Scopes Edition. The Flatchat Podcast V8 Scopes Edition.
2019!
So as we head into the last couple of weeks build up to the 2019 Scop season, we thought it would be quite fitting to have some special guests on this show for this week. Now, before I go on, I'd just really like to send out some appreciation to all of you guys, our listeners, for really getting behind this show. Especially last couple of weeks, say last week with American Marcus Ambrose driver training video creator Kevin O'Keefe and that fantastic show that he had, and everyone did go and check out his stuff and the Marcus Ambrose 12-hour stream. It was really nice to see that we got some international flavour on the show. And also, week prior to that, Scop's title sponsor holder and all-round top bloke, Jamie McKnight, when he joined us for a chat, we received really good feedback for that show, and it's no secret that everyone wanted to know the man behind the name. So it's really nice to have Jamie on the show again as co-host. You can see he didn't leave from last time. So Jamie, thanks so much for helping host out this show today.
Absolute pleasure. Glad to be here.
Mate, Chris can't make it. He's off gallivanting around the world doing whatever he's doing. I think he's working, actually.
I think he might be a bit worried that you and I do too well on this show, mate. That might be the problem. So I'll try and I'll try and keep the skill level as low as I can. Don't want to make him feel bad.
I'm sure that's going to be very hard, Jamie. No, thank you for joining.
I'll work on it.
Well, the reason is, guys, that we're here, and Jamie, that you've joined me on the show is we're recording this at early hours of the morning, I guess, because we are joined tonight by a couple of really special guests. Joining the podcast, we have former Euro iRacing V8 Supercar champion Tony Kloosterman, who is also the brains behind the entire European V8 movement, and also current reigning Euro champ Johhny Brandon. Gents, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's an honour to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first things first, Tony, as well as being a really handy driver with an I rating of over 5,000, you're a Canadian sim racer who runs a European, or is part of a European racing series, which features an Australian V8 supercar. So can we refer to you as the international triple threat mate?
I think that's a great description.
That may be appropriate.
That is a great description.
I mean, yeah, the triangle of the iRacing V8 supercar community. But the question is, mate, how did this all start, and how do you find yourself in a position as a highly competitive driver in the series, as well as somewhat the one of the brains behind it, even organising something like sponsorship with Jamie as well. How did this all come about, mate?
So I started with iRacing approximately 6 years ago, and I did that because I missed the competitiveness of autosport. I had been involved with autosport for a significant length of time, from the time I was 12 years old, actually. And I started sim racing when I was 58. So,
Stop it.
This sort of filled the void. I missed it. I missed the competitiveness, and I had heard a lot about iRacing. I was curious, and so I joined up and did the Mazdas as everybody does, got frustrated like everybody does, and then I started searching out what would be the most challenging car. And initially, I raced the Cadillac for about a year and a half. Difficult enough, but then someone told me that the Aussie V8s were even more challenging. So I took that up, made a bit of a fool of myself for about 2 years in the car trying to learn. And then one day something sort of clicked, and we're where we are today. I'm reasonably competitive, I'd say, but
he's very proficient in the car, JC. Very, very one of the most respected V8 drivers on the grid, including the Australian drivers. So Tony's being a bit humble there.
Well, look, you were saying before, Tony, when we were talking, and Jamie, you let me know about a bit of a backstory too, that, mate, you have a few of our Aussie guys go over and do the V8 series in the Europe series that you're part of, such as Marlon McMullen, Jake Burton, Michael Talianchik, Mick Cracknell, to name a few, and Jamie, of course, too. And you were saying that you keep up with those guys, maybe only just right on the back of their tail there, but that is no
I'm always behind
easy
them.
feat.
Yeah, I'm certainly behind them. They're very good. Don't worry about that.
Because we got this kind of, like I was saying before, Tony, but when we were having a chat before we did do the podcast here, we have a bit of a bubble in Australia, and most of our listeners of the podcast are going to be from the Australian, New Zealand iRacing community, and we are in a bit of a bubble. The V8 Supercar as a series in the real world is akin to, let's say ice hockey, maybe in Canada, or NASCAR in
America,
in the southern states of America. But we are so super serious about the supercar, and it translates over to iRacing. I'm wondering, how does that work for someone like yourself in North America or in Canada and over in Europe? How did you guys get into the supercar specifically?
So for myself, it was the closest thing that resembled Trans Am racing or touring car racing. Close quarters racing, very competitive, and I think that's what drew me to it more than anything else. Unfortunately, not a huge following in North America, and I think that was maybe because the car was so difficult to drive, and a lot of people on iRacing just assume that they can get in, floor the pedal, and off they go and win races, and it just doesn't quite work that way with this car.
Tony, I remember back, sorry to interrupt, I remember back when I started a couple of years ago coming across you on the track, and I was really frustrated and having a lot of trouble just getting the car around the track. And I remember you gave me that advice. You said to me, Jamie, it took me a couple of years to get this car sorted, and the reason people give up on it is it's because it's so hard and so challenging. But when you do find that pace and when you do find that balance, it's the most rewarding car to drive on the grid, so just keep at it. Do you remember that little conversation we had?
I think that was at Bathurst, Jamie. We were talking.
Yeah, it was. And I was having a lot of trouble. But you told me to stick with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the frustrating things for a lot of people there just starting with the V8, and maybe in particular for North Americans and for Europeans, is I'm not quite sure how to say this without offending anybody, but the trade secrets are very secret, and there isn't a lot of sharing of information that can help people get on the right track. And I think that if there were more of that, it would help to increase the popularity in both North America and Europe.
I would agree with that completely. But, that progression seems to happen very, very quickly after a long amount of time. I've noticed that most drivers take around a year and a half to 2 years, and then all of a sudden something just clicks in.
I'd have to agree with that. But, I'll point Johhny Brandon out here. Not a year and a half for him. He got in the car and he got quick pretty fast. So same goes for his teammate, Nicole Foggy. Very quick right off the bat, and my teammate Chris Jackson, same thing. I think some people just naturally have an ability to adapt very quickly.
Well, speaking about Johhny, welcome to the show, mate. And you are the reigning Euro V8 champion, and as I was saying, Jamie's been kind enough to provide me with some background info. He tells me that you used to be a pro kart racer in your younger years and won a few championships, and as well as being really fast in the iRacing GT3 and the Kia, you just can't get enough of the V8 supercar nowadays, and you're actually looking to make an entrance into Scops this season as part of, or driving in combination with Evolution Racing Team. The supercar, mate, why the supercar? And now, for 2019, why Scops?
Firstly, the supercar, it's all about feel for me. Compared to all the other cars in iRacing, I just think it feels right. It's hard to explain. I just get a lot of feel from the car, and I can drive the car more on the throttle as opposed to on the front end of the car, which 90, GTs, GTEs, it's all steam into the corner. It's all on the front end of the car. I think you got to be a lot more careful and really drive the rear end of the car And I just think that it suits me a lot more than most other cars. And it's much more enjoyable for me. That's the main reason.
Definitely, a lot of the real-world drivers tend to be good in the supercar pretty quickly. But maybe it is that feel thing that you have to have. The level of detail and precision you need for the supercar is really unlike any other car on the service. Granted, on the highest level, let's say the F1 series or the GT3 series, on the highest level, you do come down to those millimetres. But in general, if you're not precise in the V8, you're going nowhere. And it's guys like you that have that ex-driver history and that type of real-world understanding that tend to gravitate to being pretty fast in a V8. But yeah, you're right about the feel into the corner.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I think I'm not as precise as I could be if I just butt in there a little bit.
He's never happy, JC. He's never happy.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more reckless than I'd like to be, but that's part of the fun of the car for me. You know,
He's absolutely brilliant. Don't worry about that.
Very well, mate. You're going to fit in the Scops like a gem.
Oh, he's done a couple of races last year in the Enduro, so we know how good he is in Scops. He's going to fit right in. I actually made a prediction earlier, didn't I, JC, about where they'd be?
Jamie, you were saying at least top 15, if not top 10, you
For
could
him and
be
Nicole.
running.
Yep, that's where I think they'll be at the end of the season.
I'm really looking forward to see what you guys can do in the series.
No pressure there. Then I'll be happy to get in it at the start. I tell you, I did as Jamie says, I've done a couple of races, the enduros, and the standard in there is ridiculous and it's brilliant. You know, that's why we're here.
That's what drew you in, isn't it? That's what drew you in,
yeah,
Johhny.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter whether you're fifth or whether you're 25th. You're going to have a car a 10th behind you, a car a 10th in front. It's just fantastic, and it's all about the racing for me and the intensity. And they were some of the most intense races I've been involved with. So I can't wait. It's going to be quite early in the morning for me in London here, but it's going to be well worth it, I think. So looking forward to it.
Johhny, in some of our chats previous to us becoming good friends, we both talked about our real racing experience, mine with the bikes and you with the karts, and we both had a common answer to the question JC just said, is that you and I are the type of drivers who just love to race. Like, it's not actually any fun for us if we're 5-10 seconds in front or behind. We like to be in a pack, going toe to toe. We get that buzz from that on-track action, and I know when you joined us for Scops last year, you really enjoyed the fact, like you said, that there was 5 cars in a train. Wherever you looked, you had someone trying to throw it up the inside. You were trying to throw it up the inside. And I think that for the series that I've done, and I haven't done international series like you and Tony, but Scops gives you the sort of buzz I used to get on track in real life. It's that intense, and I really think that that's why you'll thrive, and Nicole, in the series this year, because you love a battle.
Yeah, 100% agree with the reasons for it. It's all about the racing for me. I mean, I do really enjoy just driving this car. This is probably the only car in iRacing that I'll gladly do 2 hours trying to work out what on earth the setup of the car is doing and what effect it's having. Not with a lot of success, I might add, but it's an enjoyable thing to do, whereas in other cars I don't enjoy that. But it is all about the racing for me. That's what I loved about my real life racing or in the go-karts, and that's what I love in this. That's what it replicates for me. It's that that feeling of one mistake, the person behind's going to get you, applying a bit of pressure, and he might hopefully make a mistake. It's got to be clean for me though. I'm all about the clean. It's not desperate. I'd much rather have a great race and be 20th than disappear in the lead of whatever championship I'm in and, not be anywhere near anybody. It's all about the racing.
Actually, Johhny and I had a discussion for about an hour after last weekend's races about that. And, you're right, Jamie. I think that we do want to give each other the space to race and race hard. And, we expect the other guy to make a dive every once in a while. That's, sometimes that's the only way that you can get the position, right? But I want to go back to something that Johhny said. He said he's not very good at setting up the cars. Well, God help us if he ever figures it out.
That's exactly what I said to him. He's only got about 3 or 4 sets he uses. Well, up until recently.
Setups are definitely a big thing for the Scop series, especially for race sets. I know that it is a driver's car, like you mentioned, Johhny. That is the key to this car, that you have to know the secrets of how to get the best out of, especially the trail braking and the mid-corner speed. I mean, actually, every part of a corner is there's a secret to the supercar, but mainly that mid-corner. And a lot of the setup work done is for race setup, I guess, to make sure that you can hold, like I was saying before, Tony, when we were talking about holding onto the back of drivers like Jake Burton and Mick Cracknell, etc., you can stay with them for the first few laps while the tyres are fresh, but then you notice that the guys who are really at the top of their game, they can keep up a particular pace and consistent lap times for a long, long time, while you notice yourself, like, you're like, where are the tyres going for these guys? They're still, they're still fresh.
Johhny's very good with the tyres, isn't he, Tony?
Absolutely. Yeah, Johhny can make them last.
Yeah, whereas Tony and I tend to go hard for a few laps, and then we both sort of drop off a little, and then Tony seems to be able to find a bit more pace after the tyres cool off, whereas I keep going backwards, but Johhny is very, very good at keeping the tyres cool.
This is a strange topic for me, because I'm going to butt in on this bit. I've been privileged to a few Evolution setups. They've been very helpful to me. Jamie, Brenton, great bunch of guys. They've helped me out a lot. And I've had some setups from various other people in the Euro series, and obviously I'll have a look on VRS and grab a setup from wherever I can to try and get a head start. And without fail, I cannot run the tyre pressures on any of those setups and keep them consistent. So I'm not going to say what I do at the moment, but I'm nowhere near. And if I run those setups, those tyre pressures alone, I seem to lose all feel in the car. It just makes it feel like it's on ice. When I'm trying different setups back to back, I tend to find that I have, there's obvious setups that won't work at certain tracks and ones that will work at certain tracks. It tends to be a front end setup or an understeery setup. If one is fairly reasonable, I tend to be within 2 temps with whatever setup I try. So it is literally just the one that I feel most comfortable on. We just did a race at Tsukuba, and I literally plucked some dampers out of thin air because the numbers all matched. Literally, that was the logic, and tried it, and it felt good, and that's what I run with, and it stays consistent. So yeah, I've got a lot to learn with the setups, and even when I'm
take your time, Johhny.
Some amazing setups from Evolution and from various other people, I can't get on with them. It's not a guarantee. It's.
But you do change them a little bit for yourself, and then they come good for you, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a head start.
I agree exactly. We'll work on setups during the week, and we'll end up with 3 different ones, and 3 drivers will each drive a different setup at the end of the week. It's crazy, and I believe that it is a lot of personal preference. Whether you're left foot braking, right foot braking, that
Using
sort of
clutch,
thing.
yep.
It does make a big, makes a big difference.
We both left foot brake. We like it, in the GT3s and stuff. We have the same setups. But in this, he'll make a change and go out in the practice and say, "Oh, that's definitely better." I'll do the same change and think it's definitely worse.
This is a really a good topic to get into. It'd be great to do another podcast on setups. It is interesting that speaking with you guys over in the V8 supercar community and finding out what you guys are into and talking about setups, like you were saying, guys, before, the setup and the secrets of the V8 car and how to get the speed out of it does seem to be this kind of black magic thing that no one really wants to let out any of the secrets. Because, for an example, there have been a numerous amount of times where I've been in a chat on Discord or in a session with someone from another team or even a teammate, and just out of nowhere, I just hear some bit of information. You're like, "Oh, how'd you go through that corner?" I hear someone else say, "Oh, I just did this." And a light bulb goes off and I think, "What? How? What are you doing? How come I didn't know that?"
Yeah,
and it just seems like it's common knowledge.
We all do that, Josie, don't worry.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm not alone. That's good. The reason why I point that out is I'm wondering how much competition there is over with you guys. Johhny, you obviously seem to be very, very fast in the car. Is something like spreading this particular information out there and having a bit of a dialogue with how to go fast in the car something you're interested in, or do you want to hold the secrets a bit closer to your chest and make sure you keep your pace in the series? And how much of this stuff is talked about over there? Is it as secretive as we kind of tend to keep it over here in the Australian community, or is it like a bit open over there where you guys are racing?
Well, in the Euro Series, I think we're all quite friendly, and I honestly don't think I haven't got any secrets. You know, I'll help anybody
He's just
out.
good.
I think no, I'm not saying it for that. You know,
No, you
I
are.
honestly
You're just
think
good.
that the car is one of those cars that if you just stick with it and drive it, I think it's just too hard for a lot of people. I have no idea why people don't drive it more and why there's not more participation in Europe. I don't know what the participation is like in America, but in Europe it's dire, and I've no idea why. I think people like the easy cars, either high grip cars. Whether it's a lack of time that they've got to get on the sim, what it is, I don't know. But I race the Radical, I race the F3 at the moment. I was doing a bit of GTE, but I'm not sure I'm going to continue with that. But it doesn't take that much time. It's just being patient in the car, I think, and just a driving style. But like I said before, for me, it's by far my favourite experience of driving anything on iRacing, and quite why it's not more popular, I don't know. All this talk about secrets and it might help people come in. I think if you don't enjoy driving the car, then you're not going to get very far. You know, whatever anybody tells you. For me, it's yeah.
One of the first secrets I got off actually Tony in a session, JC, was that I needed to add about 50 metres to my braking, because we all think we need to brake late to go fast in the V8, and it's actually the opposite. And Tony was watching me and he said, mate, just bring your braking marker back about 20 to 50 metres and just try. Yeah, that is one of the things that I just didn't get my head around. Yeah, that secret that Tony gave me that day helped me immensely. And flipping on the downshift, it's trail braking, those sort of things in general. I think we should talk about more.
The blipping is one of the biggest things that I've only just got onto as well.
And taking the auto blip off.
There is a correct way. Yeah, auto blip off, and make sure you have to time it like very precisely to make sure that the rear end doesn't wiggle. A lot of guys, and this is a secret, you know, out there that they might even keep the throttle on and not actually lift through the braking zone. That's one way. There's other ways of even people braking.
That's a bad habit I've got from real life.
Yeah,
I trail the throttle. Yeah, quite a lot. And maybe that helps me in this.
It actually helps stabilise the car.
It does.
I think it does. It does help with that diff, with the type of diff that the V8 has. It does actually work.
Diff,
but Brady Myers, who drives for TTL and is a really big threat to the Scop season this year. He's a fantastic driver. Sometimes we noticed, because I used to be a teammate with Brady, and his braking technique on some of the big braking zones, he'd just absolutely hammer the brake on in sixth gear, and he wouldn't shift down until the end of the braking zone into bloody first gear or something there.
Brake, then bang, 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 bang with the gears.
Yeah, bang, 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 bang. I mean, you can do that. That is a possibility.
You can have lots of different styles in this car.
I've noticed that a couple of times. Yeah, I'm not sure who does it, but
I've tried it. I can't do it, Johhny.
No, I've not tried it, but I've seen it.
I need the engine braking, but these guys do it. Yeah, Marlin's the same.
One of the things I'd like to say about the Euro Series is that we're into our third year now. Clyde Whiting invited me 3 years ago to the series, and we had 15, 20 drivers. Built up a little bit from that. I think we are averaging about 30 or 35 drivers for this season. But people give up on the car too easily. And I think part of that is that you have to be willing to put in some practice. And we put out league practice sessions once a week for 4 hours or so, maybe have 5 guys show up. And if you're not willing to put in the time, people get disillusioned with the car, I think, and go away. But what I've noticed over the last couple of years is that we are getting some competitive drivers, and Johhny and his teammate are two great examples. We now are getting some of the Australians coming over. Brendan O'Brien's been racing with us. Jamie, Michael Talianich was over. Jake Burton last week participated. Crackers has participated with us, and we're starting to find some speed. And I think what we're finding in our series is that groups of drivers are finding competitive people to drive with them at their level. So you'll have the top 7, 8, 9 drivers. Then you'll have another 7 or 8 drivers in mid-pack. and then you'll have some, nearer the back. But the people that put in the time are the people that end up jumping a pack the next season.
And isn't it great to see somebody that comes from that mid-pack, Tony, and then is all of a sudden in that front pack with us? You know what I mean? We've seen that quite a few times with a couple of the UK guys from last year to this year. They've really picked up their pace. Greg Carr comes to mind as well. They've started down in that middle backpack, but they all of a sudden they stick with it and they drive with us on track. And I think one of the keys in this car is to get out and race it, and race amongst people who are fast, because it's a bit scary at first, but they actually drag you along with them, as you get better. And I think that the Euro Series has done a great job developing a few of the European and American talents, because I've seen it in my time with you.
I agree with that, Jamie.
Yeah, I've seen it in my year with you, so I think that's fantastic.
I agree with that as well, and it's you can see the improvement from the people that stick with it. But it's 100% agree with Tony. It's about practice, and I think that's probably a big issue for the participation in it, because I do probably 3 different leagues, and for each of those, I probably do half hour, an hour's practice for each of them cars. You don't really need it. One of them's a fixed setup radical. It's half an hour. You're pretty much there.
Get the track in.
There's a lot of grip, The other one, the Formula 3, if you get a decent VRS set, make a minor adjustment, you're pretty much there. Slipstream's pretty good. You can't do that in the V8 and expect to be quick, especially not against people like Tony, Jake Burton. You've got to put the time in. It's so much harder. But I think that in Europe especially, the culture of it is people will race at Mazda on a Monday. They'll jump on for 2 hours and race a Porsche GTE on a Tuesday. They'll jump on and race a Radical fixed setup on a Thursday. You see the same people in all these leagues, and I think they can treat the V8 the same way. And when they don't have the same sort of success, whether they haven't got the time or they haven't got the commitment, I don't know, one or the other. But I think that answers it. People prefer what's easier, that they can jump on quick. But like I said, for me, I get more enjoyment out of driving the V8 than any of the other cars, and I put a lot more time into it. A lot more time.
I think that's the same for all of us in this room at the moment. We all enjoy it and we all put in the time.
In my particular driving, and I've heard this from a lot of people, that if you're going to try to give a good shot at the V8, it's really good idea not to drive too many of the other cars, because they are easier than the V8. And it's a particular type of focus level and a particular type of maturity. And this is not an age thing. I just mean maturity in the way that you have to hold back and not be too aggressive.
It's a completely different driving technique to pretty much any other car.
But you handle the switches pretty well, Johhny, but I think most people, like I struggle. I do the F3 as well, like Johhny does.
I struggle, mate.
If I jump in the V8 for practice directly after the F3, because normally we've got ASC on the next night, and I'll go I'm hopeless for about 20 minutes just trying to get the feel back. And I think normal drivers like me with normal talent or below average talent that have to work hard for it, it definitely is a bit of a gamble if you drive a lot of cars. If you're trying to get fast in the V8, you really need to stop, like I did when I was at PSS. Danny Trim said, just drive the V8 this season. I don't want you to drive anything else, and that's when I got better, because I got the feel. And I think that people like Johhny, who are pretty natural in everything, I think that advice is good for you, Johhny, but for people like me, it's hard to switch cars, and I don't know how it is for you, Tony, but it can slow me down if I try too much.
Yeah, I tried a couple of seasons driving 2 or 3 different cars, and I found that it really hurt me when in my V8 progression, and when I concentrated solely on the V8, it made a big difference. And when I say put in time, I'll give you an example. Our first race was at Montreal a few weeks back. I put in 440 laps of practice.
He's a machine.
Wow.
And he's always like that, Tony.
Wow.
You can do that when you're retired.
Yeah, you're a lucky man. I hear your wife's retired too now.
She retired last night.
Congratulations.
Today's her first day of retirement.
Congratulations. And you're on here with us. You're in trouble.
If I put in 440 laps of practice, I'd probably get a forced retirement.
yeah, I'd be neutered for sure. We negotiate my time on the sim. It's an ongoing thing. But can I ask you? Can I just, JC, interrupt and just ask Tony? I'm really interested to know, Tony, about your professional racing career. I obviously am a friend of yours on Facebook, and I have sort of stalked you a little bit. And I've always been keen to know, what did you do and how did you sustain such a long career?
Well,
obviously you were good.
The career was no, that's a lie. I started in motorsports actually when I was 12 years old. My father got involved in car rallying, navigational rallying, when I was 10, and I wanted to do this. I saw what he was doing, and I said, I want to be your navigator. And he lied to me, and I forgive him for that now. But he said, oh, you're not allowed to do it until you're 12. That's the law. And as a 10-year-old, I believed that. But he would bring home his navigational instructions for me. And he said, I want you to do all the timing and figure out all the instructions and then give it back to me, and I'm going to mark you. And when you're 12, you can go out with me. So
sounds like a smart guy.
He was a pretty smart guy. So I learned how to use a slide rule at the age of 10 because we didn't have calculators back in 1965. And I learned how to do that. When I was 12, I marched up to him and I said, well, I'm 12 now. It's time to do a rally. And he picked a club event that had about 85 entries in it. And we finished first overall.
Well done.
And and that was the start of my rally career. I did navigational rallies until I was 15. Started co-driving special stage events at that time. Did that for about 3 years. And when I was 19, I decided I wanted to be on the other side of the car, controlling the wheel, because I'll tell you, the co-drivers in stage rallies
they are very brave people.
They are certified for sure. So yeah, I did some stage rallying. I was fortunate enough to win a regional championship event here in our province of Ontario, and competed in some national championship events. And then I gave up motorsports a few years later to concentrate on raising a family. So I quit when I was 23 or 24, and didn't drive competitively again until 2001, when I bought a Subaru STI, one of the first ones in Canada, and I took up auto slalom and solo events. Became Canadian champion in 2004 doing that.
Wow.
And after that, I decided I wanted to do something unique with my son, and that was do a Targa event. So you've got Targa Tasmania.
Yeah. My business partner Adam Dodd's done that a few times.
Yeah, we have an event called Targa Newfoundland, which is on the island of Newfoundland in Canada.
Yep.
And I did that event 3 times, 2005, 6, 7, with my son as a co-driver.
That would have been awesome.
It was, other than the very first day on the very first stage, I crashed the car very badly. My son broke his arm. We finished the event, and after a week-long event, we were voted to be to win the Spirit of Targa award for the most perseverance. We rebuilt the car and came back in 2006 and 2007. And in 2007, we finished second in the unlimited class. And after a week of stages, 50 stages in total, we were 40 seconds behind the Subaru factory team. So we were very pleased with that.
Now I know why you're so good.
Rally drivers are a whole different breed, aren't they? I mean, through the trees.
Crazy.
Circuits are one thing,
Yes.
but the risk level changes dramatically for rallying. That's
I'll tell you something, JC. Johhny, I invited Johhny last week to join me in Magello in July for a track day that I said I would shout the bike, the V4 and the leathers and the bike high for the day. And all he has to do is get himself to Italy. And he said, listen, mate, I'm just not that way inclined. If you want to go and, break your neck or your spine in a few places, you go do it on your own. He said, I'd love to meet up with you, but I'm not doing it. And a lot of people, including my mother...
I might still meet you, but I don't know
I want you
about
to.
the bike.
I'll show you around the track. But I've always loved that adrenaline with the bikes. For me in real life, it was the danger that I respected and loved so much, that adrenaline when you mastered the slide on the bike and how to brake. But one thing I've always thought was a step above motorcycle racing at any level, any sort of track racing, is world rally drivers, local rally drivers, anybody who drives at 180 past trees with fans standing on the track to give you a wave and a high five as you go past, and trusting a bloke who's not even looked out the window, going 5-8 easy over jump caution, integrate. Puncture, we've just hit the tree, need another car. I think the guy in our country on the left-hand side, which is on the right-hand side for the US market, the co-driver, I think he is the most crazy human individual that's ever been born. Definitely got a death wish, but to know that Tony's done that sort of... I know Targa Tasmania with my business partner, Adam, is an absolutely horrendous, drain on your emotional and physical being for the week that you're there. To know that you've succeeded in that, Tony, that's just, awesome for me to know, and I'm sure all the guys out on track now have a bit better understanding of why you're so bloody good in the V8, but, controlling the slide. But congratulations to you, mate. That's a fantastic story, and I'm glad I asked you the question.
I appreciate that. So after that, I decided motorsport was really very, very expensive, and unless you have a lot of sponsors.
It took you that long?
Yeah, it did. So I started sim racing, and I'll turn 64 this summer. I seem to be reasonably competitive in this. So I think I mentioned it to JC the other day. Sim racing knows no age. So it doesn't know if you're 10 years old or
exactly what we discussed, JC, wasn't it?
60,
that is, yeah.
63 or 64 years of age like I am. It doesn't know, and I would encourage people at any age to get involved, because it's something that you can do from the comfort of your home, and believe me, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than real racing.
Even if you spend a lot of money on the gear, it's a lot cheaper than real racing, isn't it, Tony?
You're right. Yeah.
And I must say, that is the message that I hope that we can get out, is that if people are like I was for a couple of years on the fringe, I was watching the V8s online races, the strength of field races, the Scops races via the YouTube, just thinking, but when I make that commitment, I'm going to find out if I'm any good. You know how you have that sort of doubt? And like you, Tony, I mean, I was 41, so I'm probably a spring chicken compared to when you started, but you do worry, that you're up against these 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old guys who've got reflexes like cats, you know what I mean? They've got real kart racing experience, a lot of them. They've got a lot of talent, a lot of natural ability, and you think, am I going to go out there and make an absolute sod of myself? You know what I mean? For the people listening, you can be competitive. I mean, I started in my 40s. I think Johhny was close to 40 when he started. And Tony's just a legend of the sport. He, as he said earlier, he's 58, and he gives Johhny and I a good ass kicking from time to time, don't you, Tony? So age, it doesn't know any age, and I think that's the key to this sport, is that anybody at any age who's got any sort of ability or desire can get involved and be very, very competitive at some level. There's always someone to race.
This is a really, really good thing to say. I'm actually finding some confidence from hearing you say that too, because in our community in Australia with the Scops, the age is just getting lower and lower. Last year we had a Griffin Gardner win a race, didn't we, at Sebring?
And Cooper Webster as well.
Sorry, Cooper Webster, yeah, and they're 15. Like 15 years old.
Just turned 15.
And the reflexes. Jackson Harlow, Harley Haber, there's so many of the young guys out there who are just phenomenally fast. And the older you get, sometimes you do notice, I've personally noticed reflexes just go off, drop maybe 5% or so.
Mine have dropped nothing. Mine have dropped nothing. It's actually my muscles that they cramp up now, and if I do an enduro, my knees start to hurt. And I asked my missus to rub ointment on them. But I hope that things might progress, but they never do. But yeah, I'd say, Tony, that would probably be the only thing you'd notice, wouldn't it, is sometimes that you get a bit sore if you do some really hard racing.
Yeah, it does take longer to recover, and I find some of the events, at the end of it, you're physically drained. My wife laughs at me. I walk downstairs and I'm absolutely soaked with sweat. And she said, how does that happen when you're sitting in a seat in your room on your simulator? And I said, you just don't have any idea. Yeah, because I think a lot of it is physical, but a lot of it is mental as well. And, when Johnny's on my ass pushing me for the last 15 laps of a race, that pressure you feel. And it's... I see
tend to
a
grip
lot
my
of
teeth
the
and
younger
everything,
guys,
like actually clench my jaw, Tony, and people on Discord hear me grunt. That's why I have to have push to talk, because I've got a direct drive and I'm like, you know what I mean, trying to get the car in. And it is amazing how much physical exertion it takes, particularly for people in more our age group. The younger guys seem to be able to do it and still have a lollipop and play Fortnite while they're in the middle of the race.
I'm quite lucky with this. I did quite a lot of kart racing, and a lot of it was 24, 25-hour racing. I very rarely get a sweat on. Yeah, I'm 46 years old now. I very rarely get a sweat on in iRacing. I don't have my body aching or anything. I think I'm very relaxed, and I'm not fit. I'm not fit anymore. I'm just a very relaxed posture, I think, and I've learned over the years to relax my hands on the straights. I don't clench the wheel. You use, on a straight line, wiggle your fingers, especially in a long endurance race. I mean, that's
I don't do any of that.
Advice for anybody out there. Do it.
Yeah, I will. Look, that's great
advice. It will improve your driving and it will relax you.
That is
relaxation
great advice.
is key.
So, guys, we've spoken a lot about the car and the V8 and how to drive it, and I think this is a really great show to do this on. A lot of the guys we have on from our community over here, the willingness and the openness to talk about how to drive the car, it's almost like one of those things that, look, if you don't know how to drive, that's your problem. That's kind of sometimes the mentality. But on the other side of the scale, on the extremity, there are places like VRS and Pure Driving School. There used to be the one with TTL Driver Academy that you were
so did I.
driver. Yep, you were
and there's Pure
big
Racing
into that,
now
Jamie.
too. Yep.
Yeah, Pure Racing, and those places are there to really help drivers. So I think that the audience listening to this particular show, whilst it is some of our guys over in New Zealand, there's hopefully some of the guys over in Europe and your series that are listening. I'm really glad that we are talking about this stuff, because there's not always a conversation that you can have someone like Jared Filsell come on and just tell you how to drive a V8 supercar. It just doesn't really happen that way. So this conversation is really great, and I'd like to do more of them, guys, if possible. That'd be fantastic to do another show sometime, maybe mid-season, for you guys and for us with Scops, where we can kind of have a bit more of a discussion.
Yeah, we should be. We should, and we'll see how much Johnny's in front of me in Scops. We'll be able to see how he's going. By how many 100 points.
So much for me slipping in quietly and seeing how I got on, eh?
Oh, mate, I was making sure that wasn't happening, Johnny. Yeah. No way. You won't get away with that.
It's going to be like the appearance from Jacques Villeneuve coming and doing Gold Coast, Johnny. We're going to have a massive hype train. I hope you don't end up like him, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for the guys out there, JC, on that note, for the guys out there that are listening from perhaps not around the New South Wales or, maybe Auckland or, the eastern seaboard of Australia, if you want to learn how to drive the V8, there's a couple of leagues that are absolutely brilliant for it, and people do share information, and people are willing to stop and help you learn how to overtake and how to hold your line when someone's lapping you, which is a very important thing to learn when you're new in the car. And that's the Wheelie Bins. It's a series that runs every single day of the year, including Christmas and New Year's Day. We have no days off. I'm actually now one of the admins of it, but I don't do a lot of work. Shane Evans and Dan Coxon do all the work. But I started in Wheelie Bins. I'm pretty sure you did too, JC. And it's a sort of thing like, Tony, if you've got some new guys in the team, or maybe even someone like who's getting there now, like Ant Woodward, who can slot into. And I don't know how 8 o'clock at night in Sydney works for Canada and Europe. It's probably tough, but they also do weekends. And I would say that, and even the Euros, like Tony, whenever I've been in sessions with you and I've needed a bit of help with the setup, you've always been more than happy to talk me through something or help me or have a look at mine. I think there are series out there that do promote shared learning, and we shouldn't be too hard on the Australian guys. I mean, it's really a competitive intellectual property, which is why people don't want to initially give it up. But if you get into the right room, such as Wheelie Bins, I've never seen a session where somebody asks for help and they don't get it. And I think you'd agree with that, JC.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. The Wheelie Bins is something that we don't touch on much on the podcast, but I'm not sure if you know, Jamie, but Dan and Shane are going to come on in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Those guys do so much work for the community and get so little thanks. I mean, the cost alone just to run those sessions every night of the year, and they sometimes do multiple races a night. They're guys that just love racing. They're not particularly... they've got no egos. They just love to help people and love to go. Shane's favourite saying is, I love to go fast, Jamie. I love racing you because I love to go fast. He doesn't care whether he wins or comes second. A bit like Johnny said, he just loves a good race. But that is a room where, Dane Warren, Daniel Williams, myself, JC Richards, Chris Cassie, all of us sort of kicked off our racing career in those rooms in Wheelie Bins. And I would hate to think of the talent that's come out of that pool, excluding, obviously, you and I, JC, but the real talent like Dane Warren and his brother Ethan.
Yeah.
Those guys probably wouldn't exist without the Wheelie Bins. You know what I mean? And even lately, Jackson Harlow, he did a good year and a half in the Wheelie Bins before he did official V8, which is a very smart move.
I think it's just as important to learn to be around other cars as it is to get fast in a particular car. It's all right being able to lap the same pace as the fast guys, but if you haven't got a clue about how to behave with cars around you, It's not going to do you any good how fast you are.
No, and in our rooms in the wheelie bins, they'll actually at the end of the race say, mate, next time, if you just call me past, like say I'm ready, and hold your line, you don't need to move out of the way, just hold your line. And it's good. A couple of weeks later, I'll see that same person holding their line, and then I start to trust them when I go past. And then 6 months later, they're passing me, which is always bad. But, those things are very key, what you say, Johhny, and especially awareness when you're going 2 and 3 wide about giving room. You can't learn that watching someone. You have to be in a race. That's the only way to learn that stuff is in a race in real conditions.
Yeah, for me, it's respect as well. Yeah, that's probably a big difference with sort of real life racing and sim racing as well. For me, anyway, which is probably why I'm going to struggle in anything too competitive. But for me, it's got to be clean, and that needs respect from everybody. In real life, someone tries to go around the outside, you're fully entitled to hold your line and run them off. No one's going to pass you on the outside, and if you can help it. And you're entitled to do so, but you can't be doing that in sim racing because it just ruins the show and ruins the, for want of a better word, the game for everybody. But the Scops guys have got it right by the look.
Yeah, the really fast guys in Scops there's no drive. They know how to race. So they do have contact when you're going that hard and that fast, but it's never generally intentional. But I think what you say there is true, Johhny. That I know when I first met you, there was a level of time that I had to take to know what I couldn't do with you, and Tony made it very clear with me early in the piece when I was racing with him that if I was faster, I wouldn't need to argue, he'd let me go. Do you know what I mean? But don't be running up his ass or don't be pushing him and trying to turn him in the corners because that's just not how we do things. And I think that once you then, as I hope I did with you, after a few races with you, that you learn that Jamie can learn, and if I talk to him, he won't do that again and he'll give me a bit more room. That's how that can help you a lot in any series if people know that you're the sort of person that's willing to give a little as well. But if you're also known to be a person who gives nothing and will always take the line and will always take the corner, what you tend to get is people who aren't interested in racing you. They just let you have it, which is no fun, right? Or you get people that refuse to race with you. And I think we can all control a fair bit of our own destiny if we have the right attitude about how we drive and how we make moves. And I know that certainly I gained a lot of respect. I gave you a lot of respect quickly, Johhny, and always Tony, because you guys showed me that respect probably when you didn't need to early in the piece when we started racing. And I found that really, I wanted to reward you by being respectful back. And I think that's you can control a lot of that destiny, don't you, Tony, when you're on track if you're known to be a fair racer?
I believe that's absolutely true, Jamie. And the other thing that I think that a lot of people have to learn, and I had to learn it myself, in order to become better and to become a better racer, you have to finish races. And crashing in 50 or 60% of your races isn't going to help you at all. So I learned that back in the Americas series, maybe 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I took a step back for a long time, and I just qualified. I ran my race, and I learned what the racers around me were doing and who I could trust, who I couldn't trust. And at that point, I started to find some speed, and I also found that I started to be a bit more competitive because, you do have that respect around other racers, like you were saying.
Guys, I really love the way that you're both articulating this particular lesson, I guess. I think that if there's any guys out there who are just learning, I think this is a show for guys maybe over in the Europe series or in our series that are still just coming into their own, and this is really, really good info and good insight into some of the mechanics and the thought process behind racing a good race. And Johhny, I just want to go back to what you just said a couple of minutes ago about making sure that a clean race in sim racing is really important to keep the quality of the show going. Now, when we say the word show, it's not just what happens on track, but it's also broadcast as well. And the guys at SimSpeed, Jay and Fonty. So, I was just going to ask what the broadcast situation with the Europe guys are, Tony. So Apex Racing, because there's a really big network now, isn't there, with iRacing Esports Network, and SimSpeed is our kind of neck of the woods, and you guys also have extremely high quality broadcast. How's that going, and how's that looking for this season, guys? What's the plan and the vision moving forward as this particular esports continues to grow ever so rapidly?
Well, the Italian commentator's Johhny Brandon's #1 fan in the world, so it's pretty easy for Johhny. His name is Marco, and he says, Johhny Brandon in the lead.
Now I'm in the Ford. I think he's more a fan of the Ford than me.
He's a fan of you, I think, mate. But the other fella doesn't mind Tony Kloosterman, I can say, and they do every bit. I mean, they work with SimSpeed, JC, don't they, Tony? And they are fully committed.
Yeah, Apex TV does a wonderful job for us. They've been broadcasting our races for the past year, and we'll be broadcasting all our races this year. They're on Saturdays, 7 p.m. GMT, I believe it is, about 1 p.m. 1 p.m. in Canada, and Jamie, it's some ungodly hour there.
But it's 5 a.m. in daylight savings time. Yeah, it's 6 in daylight savings 4 when it's not. Yeah. AM, but I'm committed. I get up.
But we enjoy the broadcasts, and I think it's important, just like it is with the SCOP series, that the broadcasters are so knowledgeable about all the drivers and are able to fill all the time. And hopefully they're filling it because there's good racing going on and not because there's some boneheaded crash happening. But, we're very pleased with what Apex does to support us. And certainly it's not cheap. You mentioned sponsorship a while back, and Jamie's been kind enough to help out our league a little bit. And, sponsorship for the series is important just to pay the bills, so to speak.
Cover the costs. Yeah, it's not to make a profit.
Yeah, at the moment it isn't, is it? But it is heading in a direction, and I mean, it just keeps popping up time and time again over the last recent while, where the esport of iRacing and sim racing is at a point where it could potentially get a bit bigger. And one of the biggest things that needs to happen, like we spoke about, Jamie, on the last podcast, and I mean, I think I say this all the time. It's always a topic I want to bring up with everyone. It's because behind the scenes, this is the topic. It just continues to roll round and round and round, which is the humanisation of the esport. I know a lot of people may not be interested in, it going to a point where, the hype train, let's get it on broadcast, get more exposure and all that kind of stuff. But guys, the reality is that it is a very, very strong possibility, and it's probable too with guys like yourself, Jamie, and the guys like broadcasters like Apex TV and SimSpeed. It is very, very possible that this could be something a little bit bigger than what it is. And in saying all that, the humanisation means getting some of the drivers' characters out, not just the cars you see on the screen. I'm wondering how you view, Tony, the series over in Europe. And Johhny, great to talk to you today about and learn more about yourself. Have you got other drivers over there, guys, that you reckon could, you got a bit of a personality and maybe we could even promote over here on the show to get some of our Aussie guys listening to and watching your broadcast? Can you name a few, or have you got some type of incidents or things that have happened in past series that you can say there's some rivalry between some drivers or something like that?
Well, there's Johhny and Tony.
And
there's Jamie and Chris Jackson. We've had our love letters.
Yeah, Chris Jackson, Victor Tanaka, Johnny's teammate Nickel. All fabulous drivers. And there's this inter-team rivalry that happens, and I think that just naturally makes everybody much more competitive, right?
At the end of the day, it's racing.
Yeah, it's great racing.
So who are the big teams over there with your series? Have you got some standouts that are, you mentioned team rivalries. What are the big clash head-to-heads going over in the series?
Well, the XVR team is top of the heap right now.
They're known as the TTL of Canada.
This year, let's get onto that in a second. This podcast is going pretty long, but I'm more than happy to go as long as you guys are. But I'd love to talk a little bit about that, about the 2019 series for both Scops and the Euros. But so XVR, they happen to be the top of the pile. We've just seen this year in Australia.
Johhny's top of the pile.
Oh, okay, so it's just Johhny.
But as a team, XVR are very strong.
No, it's myself and Nickel Foggy. Who's fantastic in the car. He's absolutely rapid in everything he drives. And he's literally new to the car in the last sort of 6 months.
He's a real bastard, isn't he?
He's rapid, and he will get faster and faster. And then you've got NQR, which is Tony's team. And I think there's about 3 different variations of that. So there's quite a lot of NQR cars on the grid. So they're the 2 main teams. You've got Phantom 71, which are a good team. You have to help me out here, Tony. Some other teams from the series?
Demon Tweak's team, and
I think they're all pretty strong teams over there. I was so shocked. I thought I'd go over to the Euros, to be honest with you, and I'll show these blokes how to drive the V8 supercar. I knew Tony was there, and I might have a problem with him, but I didn't know of Johhny at the time. And I remember my first race, I got 5th, and I was devastated. And by the 3rd race, I got 4th, and I was elated because I realised that, you know what, Jamie? 4th's about as good as you're going to get here, mate. That's a good day, But the 5th in the first race, I was like, bloody hell, I thought I was going to win that, you know what I mean? They are good. And if they raced in our series, as you'll see with Johhny and Nickel this year, and if Tony did Scops, he'd be right up there. So these guys have got a lot of talent, and their teams have got a lot of talent. If they're listening, I want more of you to do the series. Come and drive with us.
Just also the run you're going to make, Johhny, with your teammate in Scops. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? I heard that you're going to be running in tandem with Evolution Racing Team. What's going on there?
Well, we're going to be doing Scops.
Partner off. Yeah.
We're going
Partner
to be.
off. So you bring XVR over?
We're coming as
your
XVR.
team?
Yeah, we're coming as XVR.
Yes, lovely.
But the car will be built by ERT.
Be more excited about that. Okay.
And prepared by ERTs. If anything goes wrong,
Yes,
it's
that's
ERT's fault. Like I said, ERT guys, Brenton, Jamie, all the guys at ERT, and I mean all of them. They've been great
top guys
for us. You know, really, really welcoming, and they're the reason that we're doing the Scops, or gonna have a go at doing the Scops and try and qualify and get in there. They've introduced us to it, and it's a real eye opener. And I can't wait. And just thanks to those guys, really, because I wouldn't have even known about it. I'm not the sort of guy that does a lot of research on what's out there with this type
But you
of thing,
see, Johhny, I knew, and Brent knew, that if we got someone like you and Nicole involved in Scops, that all of a sudden a lot more of your English and Scottish and Irish and European friends would know about it, because I'll be like, what's this they're in?
I hope this does happen, guys, that we are in a bubble in our community where it's very much an inside a particular circle of the community. And we are not better than anyone, but we do have this culture where V8 supercars is like a religion over here, and specifically on iRacing, it is just
It's like
the
English
only
football.
thing that you'll get.
Yeah.
Yes, English football, Canadian ice hockey. Like I was saying before, sorry to bring that reference up all the time, Tony.
Johnny's 40 days in Canada, that's why. Johnny just told you about rallying.
Rallying too, yeah, exactly. But the supercar for us it's not by accident that you get drivers like Phil Sells and Madison Down and stuff like that who literally grew up on supercar driving, and to know that you guys can maybe check out some of the races, and even Johhny come over and race in the series is just tops, mate. I love that.
Let me tell you, Johnny's going to give some people a few headaches. I'll guarantee it. He's going to be up there.
Awesome. How good.
Hopefully
Hey,
not
Johhny,
myself
the
too
hype
much.
is going so high now, mate.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Aren't you glad you know Jamie?
And Tony, I would love you to come and do a few Scops races too. I really would.
Yeah, I did a few 2 years ago, Jamie. Yeah, it was. But getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning at my age, I don't
Well,
know.
the secret is staying up. That's what I do. I don't go to bed. I go to bed at 6 a.m. when the race is finished. Lots of coffee. But it really interests us to get as many as the Canadian, US, and global community involved in what we do, because I think what JC said is true in the past, but I've seen a big shift, particularly in the management of the teams recently, and the coming together of the senior groups to really want to get our heads out of the sand and really promote and share and get others involved. Wouldn't you say, JC? There's been a big shift culturally that way. And, having you guys come on our show today and making the time available for us, can't thank you enough, and respect and admire both of you guys, as you know, in all sincerity. And hopefully you guys can drag a few more guys along, even to things like the wheelie bins or the official V8 races, and get involved with this. And I can give you my personal commitment that any of your guys that, come over and want some advice, just like Tony gave me when I started, I'd be more than happy if they wanted to, jump into a team chat or something and talk about the car. I'm more than happy to give them my experience. Not that it's very useful. I'm not that good. But I could always ask Johhny the questions I don't know the answers to. And, we really want to welcome the worldwide community into the V8s, and we want to make it as strong as we can, because the best races are when you've got the best people racing with you. Doesn't matter if I come 39th in the top split of Scops. I'm more than happy with that if I've had a good battle. And I think we mentioned that earlier, Johhny, that's what it's about. And the more that we can get 100%. In, the better. The more that we can get in, the better. Guys like you and Nicole, and there's plenty of other guys like Chris Jackson and Tony.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Jamie. One of the things that I'd like to say is that, this podcast that you have, I think is an excellent vehicle to get the word out there that, there's it's a big community, and it's a worldwide community. It's not, just Australia. There are people, in North America and Europe that really want to try and drive this car. And this podcast is going to go a long way, I think, to helping those people make the jump.
Thanks, Tony. That definitely is the goal and the vision we have. We just continue to do week by week, just talking to as many people as we can. And like Jamie said, it is something where the culture is changing now, and to get some crossover with you guys is just one of those rungs in the ladder of getting this series and iRacing and sim racing more exposed. What I might do in saying that is I might organise maybe a couple of practice sessions where we can link up at particular times.
That's the hard part. The times.
It is. I know we had to organise this. I had to bloody get out of bed and set an alarm.
Yeah, you're usually out of bed by 9 o'clock. I mean, that never happens.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what time. I'm not even sure what time the Scops races start for me yet.
Johhny, remember when I lied to you last time?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's scaring me, Jamie.
You don't want to know. You don't want to know. Just turn up when I ring.
Asked me to do the endurances. Said, it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning your time. Yeah, from what I think one of them started at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, but I really appreciated it, Johhny. You got to know that.
Yeah, so did I, Jamie. So did I. Yeah.
Well, XVR and Johhny, you're going to have to make it to the race. It is a long broadcast with Split 2 as well, but the pre-qualies they're on at around. Don't
tell him.
That's the difficult thing for us, the pre-quali stuff, because that's on your sort of Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, you get Saturday as well, though. Yeah.
So I'll only get into the Saturday one.
That sort of helps me a bit.
That's
from what we've heard, Johhny, from Jamie's hype, you're only going to need one lap, aren't you?
He only needs 5 laps, mate. Trust me.
Yeah.
5 laps and base laps, and up, and he's fine.
No problem. Oh my
That's how good he is.
Yeah, exactly. ERT, Phil Cell, etc. Look out. Johnny Brandon is coming to town.
Look out might be the right word, as they come in past, lapping us. But no, go easy on us, guys. Go easy on us.
Can I ask one more question of both of them? I'll start with you, Johhny. Get the glass ball out. Where do you see esports, and particularly our sport, in 10 years' time?
It's a hard question for me. I don't really look into the esports stuff. I think it's going to get bigger and bigger. I mean, just quickly, I was going to mention this earlier, but I've got some friends that are quite well connected that I used to do some racing with, and one of them does a lot of commentary for Eurosport, and he talks to a lot of people. And he genuinely thinks now, you've got all these youngsters coming in that may want to aspire to be racing drivers. But the fact of the matter is that if you take like F1 out of the equation, there's actually more money to be made now for the top 5-10% of sim racers than there is in real racing. It's a fact already.
And in my opinion, that's going to get bigger and bigger, that end.
Yes,
it's still theoretically underground and not common knowledge, but there's already more money to be made as a successful sim racer than there is as a real racing driver. So, and from what he's telling me, all the teams are waking up to it now. All the real life racers, not looking to sign particularly sim racers, but looking to get involved with sim racing because it's a platform that's going to get bigger and bigger. Whether it's a road to real driving and getting a real drive is another debate. But it's definitely going to get their attention and get their investment in the very near future by the sound.
We have the Australian driver search happening with one of my teammates actually won it last year, Ethan Grigalt. He got a $50,000 race support budget to go racing this year. We have a number of, don't we, JC, series that we give people the opportunity to get into a real race car and drive for a season.
Yes.
Jake Burton did it
VSR
last year.
Showdown was one of
so
them.
we actually are
Warren
promoting that. It's only the one or two at the top that get the opportunity, but it still gives you that chance. But I was saying in my podcast last week that I think that maybe real racing might become less relevant as time goes on because everybody can do this and it's not that expensive to do it and you don't have to leave home.
There's definitely an argument for that.
And it's a very marketable product, and personally the reason I'm on board...
I've got to be honest, I'd rather watch a V8 Scops race than a Formula E race.
Me too, mate. Me too. That's the point. Yeah, that's the point. And I'd rather watch a Euro V8 race too. They're really, really interesting.
Well, I can't wait to check those out.
No, esports, I think, is going to grow, and just evidence of that was today. iRacing in the NASCAR series held a draft to pick drivers for their upcoming NASCAR series. So, and you have teams like Joe Gibbs Racing, Junior Motorsports, Roush Racing, picking and probably paying drivers to compete for them, in the iRacing Championship. And it's not chump change that they're racing for either, with a $100,000 prize fund as well. So it's I see it happening. In the investment community that I'm involved in, it was interesting, Jamie, that the conversation this week on their podcast was esports and how do I make money off of this?
That's a similar conversation I've been having.
And these are people that, and these are people that have got a significant stash of money that can make things happen. And they're exploring esports because they believe that's where it's going to be down the road.
I'm trying to be the first brave one to throw some real money in and say, come with me. That's what I'm trying to do, because I'm sure that it's going to pay off. I'm absolutely positive that in 10 years' time we will look back at this period and say, well, they were the last of the old days. You know what I mean? When it was sort of amateur. It's going to get to a point where we'll still always have people like me and, Josie running around, causing, problems for the fast guys. But, at the end of the day, we're going to have some superstars come out of this sport, and they're going to be maybe as well known as anybody.
Yeah,
that's my take on it, and
Jamie.
I want to be on board when it goes bang. That's what I'm here for.
And the broadcasts, the broadcasts are exceptional. Whether it's Scops or any of the other Australian series I've been able to watch, the strength of field splits on Mondays for you guys, or whether it's the Euro V8 series, I think the broadcasts are really elevating the sport, and it's attracting people to the sport.
Finally gets taken by a big media organisation and put into the mainstream viewing, that'll be the day that everything changes. That's what I'm trying to make happen personally. Yep. Once that moves from the YouTube media platform to the additional national and international media platforms, the day someone makes that happen, that's the day everything changes, in my opinion.
It will happen, guys. And one of the things, I just keep coming back to it over and over again. If I was one of those people, and I know people like that, we have some in our community, Jamie, people who work in television.
We sure do.
Particularly, if I was one of those people, the only catch is who are the stars in your series, and what are they like, and how do we get their faces out there to get the viewers and the audience interested in following the person, not the car. That is really the key. And as much as someone doesn't want to stick their face on a photograph and send it in to the guys at SimSpeed or whatever, like, it does seem a little bit odd or a bit far-fetched, but guys, that is the way forward. And knowing that we can talk to guys like you now, Tony, Johhny, by the way, another shout out to the next V8 Supercar Online Premier Series champion, Johhny Brandon, 2019. No hype intended, but he's come to basically wipe the floor with everyone out there, guys.
Might have got him here, Tony. Checkmate.
Well, every eye in Australia is going to be on him at Scops now. You know that.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, that's fine.
I really appreciate the encouragement. Thank you very much.
No pressure. Just say, look, so what we might do, I might wrap this up, and I'm going to get some links for... There's two audiences here. The guys over in Europe, Tony, I might put some links up on the show, and if you share it out, we'll get some links to specifically wheelie bins, which Shane and Dan and Jamie run over there, and it's a great place if you guys can make time to come on. Every single night they run a race, and it's a really good place to run car to car.
And it's quality, yeah. You got your beginners, but you got your quality too.
Yeah, and then we can link up some other info as well about Scops too and the broadcast, and maybe I'll get a time frame chart up as well, so we can interlink some
and links for the Euro V8 races too in reverse.
That's the other way, vice versa. I'll definitely get some links to the Euro stuff too. I'll talk to you in a second, Tony, and get all those links. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining, and I hope that this message gets out there. And it was a fun podcast. It was really nice to have you guys on.
Yeah, it was a privilege to have you on the show, guys. Thank you for making the time. Really appreciate it personally.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
But again, thanks. And Jamie, thanks so much for helping host today.
Thanks for having me, JC.
No probs. All right, and we'll check
Catch you later, guys.
Check you next week.